Hey, everybody, welcome into the Connection Loop podcast. I'm Rob. Welcome back for another episode. We're all about talking to sales leaders and businesses that are really making an impact, having conversations that really where people, when they tune in, can really learn something of value. We find the hero's journey for a lot of people that we have on here is so important. And today, I want to introduce Craig. He is the VP of Sales with Stride. And he's one of those gentlemen that we're going to have an interesting conversation with today. He's got a lot of experience in sales. And he's going to talk to us about a number of things today. But just to start off, Craig, just to introduce everyone to the audience in terms of who you are and just a little bit about your background and kind of what you're currently doing now with Stride.
Yeah, I guess as a generic level, I'm a salesman, have been for a long time, and didn't grow up to want to be a salesman like many of us. We just kind of back into it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of experience on the SaaS side, so working with enterprise companies with products, products and services that'll support their business efforts. But most recently, when I joined Stride, it is really a custom software. Well, we do a couple of things, but it's more of a it's a pure services play.
Mhm.
So we're not productizing anything at this point. We're really going in and providing consulting services around Gen AI and software development.
That's great. And then I think, we're living in a time where we had this conversation recently where sales is very much service and value based now more than ever with the
Yeah,
amount of information that people have in the world. Very different than the one call close days about having everything where the salesperson had all the information and then the other person maybe didn't. So people do a
yeah.
lot of research today. Where do you kind of stand on the value based stuff? Do you feel like that's just a massive part of this now?
I don't even know what that means anymore, to tell you the truth. That
Mhm.
has changed so much in the past 3 years. Right over here, I have the new strategic selling Miller Hyman. It was an
Yeah.
incredible book, and I still believe very much in the principles. But
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is actually 100% accurate. With the advent of the internet and so much information,
Mhm.
potential buyers come to a call, if they come to a call with so much research that they've done. Well, sometimes they do, but they have access to all the information. So me being the one that's holding the single source of truth
Sure.
is not, it just doesn't work that way anymore. So that affects the way every salesperson approaches a potential prospect or goes through a deal cycle.
Yeah, and I think, there's that level of trust that we're able to really instill into people when we have consultations, phone calls, demos, where you're not only providing the product information or the service information, but you're also very aware of what their situation is because of the
Yeah.
information that's out there as well. So it's a two-way street that I think works pretty good.
I mean, I think that's ultimately important. I was talking to somebody who works for me who hasn't been in sales. I said, think of it this way without complicating things. Yes, you do need to know the methodology, you do need to have a format, you do need to have a strategy. But at the end of the day, you want to be selling like you're not, like it doesn't look like you're selling, right? You want to have, and I hate to use the phrase, you want to have a conversation, but you want to help the customer move through a process that
Mhm.
is going to be ultimately good for them. They're going to get what they need, and we're both going to decide. Like if I was dating, we both have to decide: are we moving towards a marriage,
Right.
or does she disappear and I see her with somebody else? 2 months later. It's very much like that at this point.
Mm.
So the value to me is, uh, building trust in the sense that you're confirming, you're offering, but you're really putting the, I don't want to say the power, that's not the right word, but you're putting uh, the center of information in a collective space, not in one person's bucket.
Yeah. No, that
That
absolutely makes
makes
sense.
sense.
No, it definitely does. And I think again, it's back to that level of being comfortable on both sides. And I think that really does
Yeah.
that. Um, differentiating yourself, something we talk about here at Dub all the time, especially when we interview people, standing out. I think that's one of the biggest things in sales and growth and business and
Hmm.
even customer service, standing out from the crowd. Now, you have a phrase called sales as an art form. What
Yeah.
would that actually be in terms of just how would you break that down for people so they understand that?
I don't know if I can in a way that's completely concrete, but I would say think of it this way: the way, the phrase life, work life balance,
Mhm.
right? Everyone uses that phrase. To me, that doesn't make any sense. It does make a sense if we're looking purely at time, what we spend time doing.
Sure.
But to me, there is no separation. That I approach sales and my job the same way I would approach music, the same way I would approach a relationship.
Mhm.
It's I am me wherever I am, and so it's always a vehicle for expression, for personal, individual evolution, collective evolution.
Yeah.
and just a chance to be more refined in what I'm doing. That's why I look at it as just as much of an art as playing music or creating a piece of, writing a book or anything else.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of that being around developers, speaking of technical people, because the way they approach code is very artistic. And that never made any sense to me. Like, you just write the code. What's the big deal? But then I realized that as they showed me this, there are a million ways you can get to the result you're looking for. And that's where the art comes in, the way each person expresses themselves through that code.
Has that helped you with sales demos and presentations in terms of kind of weaving that in a little bit for the lay person to kind of understand?
The approach about sales being an art.
Yeah. Just understanding,
Yeah,
like you said, there was all those things in the background that happened that really make it's like being in the kitchen, understand what's going on in the kitchen. The
yeah.
person sees the food at the end, they're like, "Wow, that's amazing. How did that happen?" Like, is there any kind of pieces to that you kind of use when you're talking to people?
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, it has to affect everything. I can't imagine it doesn't. Definitely selling from a more personal perspective, but also having boundaries to some degree,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We're not best friends at that point. I have a job to do. They have a job to do, but there's a more human approach to doing that. So when I'm in demos, obviously traditional sales 101, you have to understand their pain points, how our product or service aligns to that, how we can solve that and demonstrate that. That's very clear.
yep,
But on top of that, what I was going to say before is, like, if I'm so robotic in the way I'm approaching a demo,
hmm
then the person feels like I'm just checking boxes. But if I allow for spontaneity, as we're having this conversation right now, you have a clear format and how this is going to go.
yep,
And we want that. But then we want to allow spontaneity to be responsive to the moment. So if I'm in a demo and the person says something, or an individual says something, or we have to go a different direction because it makes sense to do that,
mhm.
I can be open enough and not so tight to do that.
And I think the other person senses that as well, or at least a seasoned person that's been in demos or conversations before. Because a lot of the times when you ask a question to someone, if it feels like it's just part of this big machine
Yeah,
that's moving, and you give your answer, is the person really listening to your answer? Even though we say in sales, listening is monumentally important, but do enough people really do that? Because a lot of the times when you take that sidebar, that little side conversation rabbit hole on something else, that really builds the conversation, is more memorable and it's
yeah,
meaningful to what the big end is going to be at the end of the sales call.
100%. And if the salesperson or individual is able to allow that to happen, but still guide it back, right?
Mhm.
Because that's part of the art too. Guiding it back where it doesn't feel like you're yanking them back. Um, that makes a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. How do we
Oh,
how
actually,
do we
one more
talk?
thing I was going to say to you
Yeah,
when you,
yeah,
when you
yeah. Go.
said that, it just reminded me that this is also something I was telling a friend of mine recently. The higher up I've gone, speaking to CTOs, CEOs, board members, the less formal the conversations are and the less formal the communication is.
Sure.
I'm sure you have this experience. The emails are very quick. The conversation is just very quick and real. Just tell me what it is. Because at that level, they're not really concerned about all the details of how we're going to do this. What is the result? How is this going to help us make more money, save money, or keep me personally out of jail?
The last one, incredibly effective. Exactly.
It has been in my life.
Yeah,
Not
no, I
always
agree, I
effective,
agree.
but
That's a big one. And like, well, you could do business from jail. You get how many phone calls? We get one phone call. Do you get one demo when you're in the cell? Oh, yeah, I have no idea. So take that last part of what you said, right? Because you really kind of were talking about some important things with strategy there. So if we looked at just take this last year, okay, this is something we ask a lot of people.
Mhm.
Within the last calendar year of what we're doing here, has there been one part of the strategy that's been very effective for you in terms of what you do?
Yeah, it's a modified or more strategic version of the land and expand, right?
Mhm.
So I've worked for a lot of startups. This is a startup I'm at now, and the one before that, it was a very cutting edge technology. And as salespeople, we always want to have a long term strategy when we're engaging,
Mhm.
but we don't have enough trust yet to sell that many times, right?
Yeah.
And so usually we say, okay, we'll land and expand, right? That's fine as long as I know what that expansion looks like, or I want it to look like, right? Then that informs what I'm doing in the moment. So, for example, if I'm going if I'm closing somebody, we want our team to come in and do an assessment of whatever it is. We're going to give you some intel and give you some direction on where you can go from there. And I'm selling is not the right word. I'm offering that to the client.
Mhm.
they're happy with that, and they're like, "Oh, let's do that, and then we'll decide if we both want to move forward," right? But in my mind, the reason why I'm doing that at maybe 50% of the cost or whatever it is, not always going on price, but
Right.
I'm giving that part to them is because in my mind, this is a small part of a much broader universe that I want to get to.
Yep.
Does that
And I
make
think,
sense?
yes, and I think what you mentioned too was a really good point for a lot of people out there as well. A lot of the time and it's not all the time, but a big percentage of the time when someone's caught up on price and budget, a lot of
Yeah.
the times it's kind of another chance for us to explain the value more.
Yep.
Because dropping the price is a race to the bottom. It's a scary thing sometimes because there'll always be someone that comes in probably cheaper. So it's like
Yep.
a chance to re-emphasize the value of what you're getting at that point and everything that, in line with it. So I think that's an important point for a lot of people.
And value is like discovery to me. It happens continuously through the sales cycle, right? Like kind of what you're saying. And then if we built up enough value, which really means have I demonstrated enough that I understand what their problem is and they understand how we can solve it? Because sometimes those two don't align,
No,
right?
absolutely. Those are two different roads sometimes. Yeah.
And so how do you do that? It's by constantly gathering intel, but then also I think the biggest thing in sales is being able to take all information and digest it and then regurgitate it and deliver it in a way where we modulate to what the customer understands and what they can hear.
Yes, because a lot of the times if you don't do that modulation, they're not gonna understand what you're giving back to them. And if there's
Right.
any kind of confusion, then it's out the window.
Or we're selling the completely wrong thing. I've done that many times in my career as well. I didn't listen to, you mentioned listening, and
Yeah.
that's such an important part because the times, and it continues to happen, the times that I'm so tense
Mhm.
that what I'm listening to is what's in my head. Okay, what
Sure.
do I ask when they respond? What's coming up next? It's good to have that stuff in there, but not when it's so tense and I don't have space
Right.
to be open. I don't know how you get there. There are strategies, there are techniques, meditation, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
Call me up. I'll tell you all the ones I've used.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just a little bit of a relaxing into that perspective or that sense of a bigger space around that, so
Mhm.
it's not so tight. This is not life or death. It's this point right here. Then I
No.
can listen.
Yeah. I agree. If you start feeling tense, there's no good that can come out of that in terms of communication because then you could even fall back on, and this is something that I did, early on. You can fall back on bad habits. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
sports related. Like I love basketball, love football, all that kind of stuff, right? And you're trying to change your throwing motion or maybe your shot or maybe your stance. And as soon as you start getting tense, that old stance comes back in and
Yep.
you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. So I've felt that before.
Can I share a quick story about early in my
Yeah.
career? I think it's appropriate. So speaking
Yeah.
of not listening and being so tense, um, well, I play music, so we could talk about that at some point. And how the aspect of playing together with other folks in the sense of spontaneity and form.
Yeah. Of
But
course.
before that, when I first started in sales, and I didn't want to be in sales, I was creative. I wanted to be in the creative side of it. But the CEO of the company, it was a very small company. She said, "Look, if we don't have leads and I can't close business, I can't keep you here."
Yeah.
So I said, "Give me that lead book." And I grabbed it, and I was in a small room for like 8, 9 hours a day. I made like 250 phone calls a day, right? It was not strategic. She
Mhm.
gave me cue cards, like what to do, what to say. Like, here's the pitch. If somebody says this, do this. And so I called somebody up and I said, "Can I speak to whoever, Mr. Jones?" And the woman, she had a very thick Southern accent. She's like, "I'm sorry, Mr. Jones passed away last week." And I didn't hear that, or I was too nervous. So I said, "Should I call him back next week or next month?" And she started laughing. She goes, "Honey child, you can call him back next week, next month. You can call back 10 years from now. He's dead. He's in the ground. He ain't never coming back." And I could not believe that I didn't hear what she had said.
That is an awesome story. And unless she came back with like, look, I'm gonna look into a seance or some kind of beyond the grave communication. I don't know if that's possible. That would be the
It is
greatest
possible.
sales
Maybe,
call of all time. Beyond the grave. Lee, you actually closed him from beyond the grave. I mean, that would be
yeah,
insane.
can you open an interdimensional portal where I can actually have direct access to Mr. Jones and he can influence, he can be a champion on this multi-complex deal.
Forget AI. It's all about seances and getting beyond the physical
Uh,
realm. And that's like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar. just from the other thing. That'd be
Right now, my credibility across the board is going down.
No, I think people are coming in now more. They're like, wait a minute, this is a new strategy. It's all about new strategy. So I think what you just said, oh my God, this has got to be the champion though. Like, because this question here, what's the biggest mistake that you've made? I would take it. That's a good story. I think a lot of people can learn from that listening. But from a strategic, maybe something wasn't sent right, or what's kind of the deal on that one? What would you kind of peg that?
I've got two. It wasn't necessarily from this year. Well, one from as I'm learning this last year and this year, but one earlier in my career when I was working a $12 million deal.
Yep.
And it was a complex deal in the sense that there's multi-stakeholders on their end. There were multi-stakeholders internally at my company. And I did update folks, but I kind of did it in a silo, And eventually we got them all together because the deal was in crisis, and everybody sat down in the same room. And I'll never forget this. We're going around, everybody's talking about whatever, and then the chief learning officer on their side says, why haven't we done this before? Like, I had no idea you could do this. I have no idea these people know that. Like, I did not bring people together as soon as possible in the right way with a plan and a strategy, and make sure that the right people were talking to the right people. It's like you want to come together, and then you want to have lines of communication that are necessary, but you want to be in control of that to some degree. You have awareness of it. We lost the deal right then and there because it was already too late. They were talking to competitors who had already done that, and they looked at it as being very transparent in the sales cycle, and they felt that was not happening. The resources were being withheld from them. We didn't understand their problem. Whatever it was, we were done. And it was a big learning. It was a big learning moment for me because I'd done parts of that, but to see how I waited too long and I didn't have enough cohesiveness we're talking like enterprise level, multi-stakeholder complex deals.
Yeah.
That was a big learning lesson. Sorry, go ahead. I'll pause for a second.
No, I think that just the enterprise stuff, the multi-layers, the approvals, the different departments, the different heads, the different communication. I mean, it's a whole different labyrinth, and how long was the sales cycle on something like that?
Oh, we were 9 or 10 months in, I think, and they had already talked to them for about 6 months before that. We won a small little pilot for like 150,000 or something, and this was another 6-7 months out. I mean, I've worked deals that are 2 years, and there was more, but it's God. I always say to myself, why do I do this?
Why do you put yourself through that enterprise hell that's going just like this? Well, because what's on the other side of that is hopefully a bright light.
Exactly. But considering the fact that here's the thing that's interesting that I think people, if they're not aware of this, it's an interesting point because it put things in perspective. What is the biggest thing a salesperson can do? We always say be resilient, but keep in mind that if you're selling SaaS, a commoditized SaaS product, right?
Yeah.
A good or average, a pretty good win rate is 15 to 25%. Unless your sales force and Benioff was pissed off because it was like 50%. And I was like, that is amazing. Most salespeople are 25%. That means 75% of the time we're losing. Right? That is a hard thing, no matter who you are as a salesperson. It hurts every time I lose, no matter what the reason is. Always hurts, and I'm glad it does.
Well, you know why too? Because sales in general is, look, a neurosurgeon could say, look, my job's the hardest one in the world. Guys working on oil rigs. A lot of jobs have a lot of really difficult aspects to what they do, right? But I think, again, I equate it back to sports. If you take baseball Hall of Fame, someone hits 3 out of 10. If I told you 3 out of 10, would you be like, that's a great percentage? No, that's like, not that great. Just in general in life, 3 out of 10, it's okay. But in sales, 30%, but 300 batting average, you're going to the halls. So it's all about how you kind of balance that out when you look at it,
Yeah.
And the expectation.
The other, if I could share one more, if we're close to time, I could skip it.
No, go.
From a leadership perspective, there's been a lot of, I guess from everything I've learned a lot from making so many mistakes and doing things the wrong way that I've just been so many cycles. I've been fortunate to be doing it so long that I go, wait a minute, 275 times I've done it that way. Maybe I want to try it this a bit. Anyway, from a leadership perspective, one thing that I've seen, and I see it continuously, when I don't take full, complete, absolute ownership of something, of the sales motion, or the building the sales motion, and I don't mean in a dictatorial way, but ownership of what's my job responsibility, it leaves gaps for people. Right. So people get nervous. They're like, do I need to come fill this in? Things get confusing. And then people start acting in all different ways, because there's no solidity and there's no safety. I hate to use the word safety, but there's no formula going
Yeah.
on, right?
Yeah.
And that's been a really big thing. Like if I'm wishy-washy when I'm communicating something, if I don't give the right information, if I step back and don't enter something, if I don't protect my salespeople,
Yeah.
that's also a huge thing.
Mhm.
They have to be absolutely, as a leader, you have to, doesn't mean I'm going to give into everything they say, but there needs to be a line of protection where I would directly work with them on whatever it is, but I protect them because they're working for me.
Yeah. No, and
That's a big thing.
yeah, team, people want to feel like you have their back, number one, in general. But number two, it's really about learning and teaching and that whole camaraderie of, okay, we're all on the same page. We all know the same sales message. We all have the same, like you mentioned earlier, we all have the same goal, script. We know the different ways we can kind of present these things, the demo presentation, all of that is covered. But then it's about, as a leader, really showing people how to bring that part of them out that makes them
Yes.
very individualized. Because a lot of the times when you have sales scripts, it's a lot like acting where you've got to make it your own. Because even though that information is there, even if it's typed out to a T, you still
Hmm.
have to bring your own personality to what that's saying. And I think
So
that's a big part.
how do you do that? Like when you're coaching people, how do you get them? Because I think that's such an important point.
I think it really comes down to when you meet someone, for me, it's really like we're doing it right now. Like I can hear your tone of voice, how your eye contact is, your body language, things like that. So if it's a demo situation where people are on camera, which is what 99% of the world now, pretty much. I mean, even though it's
Crazy.
omni-channel with phone, email, it's still there. But that's a large part of it. When you have an
Hmm.
open conversation with someone. So I like just talking to someone at first, having a conversation, because you can really kind of feel the personality. And then you can decide, oh man, you know what? They're really good with improvisation in terms of what they're talking about. So once they have that knowledge down, really give them some a long leash in terms of where they can kind of go because they're talented
Yeah.
enough to bring it back. If there isn't that, I think staying to the anchor of the script is great with peppering in parts of what your personality is. So I think it's really about the interview and having that back
Yeah.
and forth from really learning.
And what you said, I think, is such an incredible. I'll use the word beautiful. It is a beautiful thing that because it's you're seeing what the essence of the individual, and you're
Yeah.
actually helping them bring that out and making them successful at the same time. There's nothing more incredible and beautiful than that.
And it's good for both because whether that person's on straight commission, whether they're on salary and commission, the company's bottom line, it feeds into everyone and the person's
Yeah.
confidence because nobody wants to lose a deal, and things like that. It really helps. Um, all right, so two more things. One's going to be a fun one, but this one before the fun one. This is more, when we look at the current landscape, AI, generative AI, everything that's going on in the world, and it's happening so quickly. It seems like,
Hmm.
if 3 months passes, it feels like 3 years pass in terms of the technology and how much better it's getting. Strategy, marketing companies have to be really fleet of foot in terms of like, hey, we're not going to do a 1-year contract anymore. Try 1-month contract, and we'll see how
Yeah.
the results are because people want to know that quickly, right? So, what do you feel this year, current, is one of the biggest things that you've learned?
I don't know if there's anything to add, and I think I kind of shared some of it. But I think the point you made about like the way we go to market with something
Mhm.
has drastically. So I'll give you an example. This was last end of last year, so it's kind of this year.
Yeah.
We had a product, but didn't really have a product. We had a portion. We had something that would look like a product. It maybe kind of looked like a product in the dark, right?
Yeah.
And it's not really a way of saying it, but at some point I realized, okay, usually I would sell 6 months out, right? Like we
Mhm.
all do. We'll sell a vision of what we're going to be, but
Yeah.
we weren't hitting deadlines with the product development. Nothing anybody's fault. It just was a hard thing to do. And then at some point I realized, okay, Craig, pare that back.
Mhm.
Sell what you can sell right now.
Yep.
You can give the vision of that certainly, but do it in a way where you're not having the customer focus on that. 15 years, I'm going to buy that incredible brownstone in New York City, in Manhattan over there where I'm looking for my apartment in Brooklyn, right?
Sure.
That's important to know. It's important to have as a vision and to take actions along that. But if I get so caught up in that, then I'm going to hate the apartment I'm in. And
Sure.
I love this apartment. So like that has stayed with me a lot. Like sell what you can sell. Yeah, it's just, and I know that's going to come across as a very short-sighted perspective, but there was a reason why I had to do that in that point
Yeah.
and pull back a little bit on the evangelistic visionary. We're going to eventually cure your cancer, and then everything
Yeah.
else is wrong with your body.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I would love if we get there, but just not reality.
Yeah, and I think now more than ever, we need one foot in front of the other because
Yeah,
especially with AI, and that's something, we have with Dub, we have AI writers, we have sales AI stuff. We have a lot of stuff that the team's developed, but every step of the way, especially with AI, is when someone sees AI can do something, right? Wow, AI can do that. Oh, can it do this? And they're already thinking 20 yards down the field, which is fine for the developers and everything. But for the people that are on the front lines with sales and customer service, it's what can it do right now that's going to
yeah.
affect right now. So there's that marrying of those two things, the short and the near, that's very interesting.
It's so funny because the biggest part of the job at Stride. So I mentioned that we had made our bones working alongside development teams, building software and deploying it. We saw this advent of Gen AI coming out with Chat GPT and everything else, and suddenly people knew what a large language model is. Oh, I know about LLMs, right? Every CTO has a charge to figure out how they're going to leverage Gen AI in their business. But they might not know what that even means or where do we use it. And it creates a lot of freneticism. We have to do it right now. So that also creates a freneticism in me. Like, we got to figure this out right this second because I'm a salesperson and I'm not patient.
Yeah.
But it's an important point to really be clear about how we can help them, and we are, and then execute on that.
Yep. And it's our job to be impatient, but it's their job then on the backside in the kitchen. They got to be a little more patient than us in terms of make sure that everything's coming out right, because we could
Yes.
sell the heck out of it, but we got to make sure what we're selling is exactly what it's supposed to be. So that's a big part.
That's another, making sure that's really the salesperson's main job, is being the liaison between this is what it is in a nutshell. It is managing the expectations of the customer, level setting them with the developmental mindset of the internal team, right?
Yep.
There's always a gap there, right?
Sure.
What we think we can do is like this. What we're actually doing may be like this, and then making sure we're modulating that or communicating that clearly to the customer.
No, that's beautifully said. All right, so I'm gonna end with some fun stuff here. So obviously you've got your guitar behind you, right? So I'd like you to play a tune. I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that.
No, you don't want me doing that.
Our co-founder, Ruben, he's a huge music guy. He's been doing it for you. He loves music. So talk to me a little bit about the art side for you. The music side. Like, it's obviously something you love, or kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Aside from metaphysics or just I don't know what to call it, conscious, personal development or growth, whatever terms we use, that's not a passion. That's my orientation. That's why I was saying sales is an art, because having that orientation, I approach everything that way. But music, I don't. It's funny. I have tried to stop playing music because I'm a drummer.
Oh God!
By trade, I'm a drummer. I could play guitar. I could play very little keyboards. I sing sometimes, but nobody wants me to do that. Nobody's happy about that.
Hey, spoken like a drummer, right? There it is.
That's right. That's what was I just going to say? So it has been like a constant source of not just creative expression, but just a constant source of comfort and excitement and value and passion and just pure enjoyment my whole life. It really has.
Who's your favorite band? Who's your favorite band? I know it's a tough one. Just pick one. Throw it out there. Who you got?
I don't have one. If you're talking high school years, it was the classic, typical rock stuff like Van Halen, Judas Priest. But then I went Michael Jackson, Miles Davis, Coltrane. They had a ton of jazz, influences. I love all styles of music if I can, especially if I can play it.
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten in heavy into world music, like Latin infused jazz, which is just phenomenal to play on drums.
Really? Oh, that's pretty amazing. That's cool.
Do you play an instrument?
No, God, I'm really good at listening to music. No,
very important. Very important.
My skill set is cartooning. I love cartooning. I've been doing stuff as a kid, so
really?
illustration stuff. Yeah, like my favorite hero growing up as a cartoonist, two people: Jim Davis, who did Garfield, and Gary Larson, who did The Far Side. Which Gary Larson is probably the goat of all the cartoonists ever to live. One-panel cartoons, super funny. You've probably seen the most famous one where it has the kid going to push the door on the side of the building. It says pull, and it says school for the gifted. It's just one of the best ones ever. So that is one of the best cartoons ever made. Anyway, if you ever seen The Far Side? Have you ever, the cartoon?
Yeah. No, I don't know it well, but I've seen it. Yes.
So yeah, he started to redo it. So he retired for the height of his career in the mid-90s. He came back the last couple of years, and I was like, oh my God, Gary Larson's back on his website, farside.com. The reason he came back is because he got sick of, farside.com. He got sick of drawing with the pencil on paper. So I've been doing digital stuff on Procreate on an iPad for years now. I made the switch, right? And it's really great once you get used to it. He loved the technology, but it was like this new little thing that he had. He's like, wow, he goes, I'm enjoying drawing again. So now he has all these cartoons that he's coming out with are all new. So it's a big gift for me. So yeah.
Do you find that like, so I talked to a lot of my friends who either paint or not paint, but they write poetry, write books or whatever. Do you find that, or comedians, do you find the change, like when you're doing something in pen and paper, or when you're, or in your case, pencil and paper, I think, if you switch to digital, does your mind work differently?
No, it was about the same. And the reason, I think they did a really good job. I haven't tried other programs. I'm sure they're all very similar, but with Procreate, the one that I use, it has layering, which is so convenient, because if I was drawing on a piece of paper, I'm going to start with my pencil, and then I'm going to go over it with ink, and then I'm going to erase my pencil lines. But with digital, you can have multiple layers. I could have my color layer. I could have my ink, because I can't get rid of the color once I put it on there. If I'm doing a color drawing, that's on there. It's stuck. So the convenience of being able to remove something and the dexterity of the technology, if I'm using a pencil, a pen, it's really similar. Now, drawing on glass takes a little bit of time because it's so smooth, but there are things that you can put over it. But I've just gotten used to it. It's so convenient. So
that's so cool. It's so wild. It actually plays well into the conversation we had about AI and what that's doing to automate certain things and expedite it for us. It's really interesting. That's a whole other topic I would love to talk about some other time. The connection between AI and human being.
Oh my God, and I'll say with music wise, I see posts all the time where, AI is trying to come into the space where it creates songs and, artwork. Obviously, we all know about that, writing. So I think as long as we kind of have the ability to have AI assist our human beings and help us with these things, great, and not replace us. I think that's the biggest thing. But that'll be a chat for another time.
I'm okay with being replaced. They send me somewhere else. Nice.
Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, we have to be nice to our AI overlords. We have to be very polite to AI. That's the one thing when you're using ChatGPT out there or using Ira from Dub, be polite. Your prompts are always polite. It's always the biggest thing to do.
You have your own LLM, your own model?
Yeah, we have it's called Ira. So it's similar to ChatGPT, but we added this proprietary little profile feature where you can kind of describe who you are, your outreach. It has some structure to the writing too. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. So, but Craig, thanks for joining us today, man. You've got a wonderful personality, great background, great delivery. You're made for video. There you go. This is like you're a medium, man. And I think hopefully people out there today really learn some things, play it back. And we'd love to have you on again sometime. This sounds fantastic.
Thank you. I really appreciate the conversation. It was fun.
Yeah. And now, Craig, we have your LinkedIn here. Any other place that people can get a hold of you or anything like that in terms of getting coming to see you?
That's probably the easiest way to start. And then, depending on what it is, we could, phone numbers and emails are fine.
Okay. Perfect.
They can also, if they want to check out, you just put it up there, Stride.
Yep. Got it. Right there.
Yeah. Anybody looking for any help in the sense of leveraging GenAI in their business or custom software delivery, you got a problem that you don't want to solve, but needs solving, give us a call.
That sounds like the opening to a movie trailer. There was a problem, and then it got solved. That's perfect. Starring Craig. Everyone, thanks for joining the Connection Loop podcast episode. We'll see you next time. Craig, if you want to hang with me for a little bit, but everybody else, take care. We'll see you next time.
Take care.